Hey everyone, this is my very first ever podcast episode, and expect more of these to come. I've been thinking about doing this for a few months now. It's been something where I've seen a lot of people do podcasts, and I like to see the conversation, or should I say, hear the conversative aspect of more than just one person, like just a group of people talking about different things, whether that be music or whether that be weather. All of it's going to come in this series I'm doing. This is called the Lifecast Podcast, basically casting um, everything about life and everything in between. So let's go ahead and get started. This is basically going to be, this first episode is going to entail my introduction, the introduction of myself and what I'm about, and just life in general, why I'm here, like where I'm at today, why am I at this point in life. So, I was born on April 4th, 1998. Early in the morning, it was a rainy Saturday, cloudy day. It was in the 50s. I was born. My mom and dad were, of course, very ecstatic, and I'm the youngest of three kids in my family. So, things were all set in stone. 1998 was quite the year for my parents. Of course, having your first Christmas with your kid and stuff, that's always a special moment in your family's history. But 1999 is when everything changed. And here's the thing, too. I should consider myself lucky in this aspect of family matters, because there's some kids who don't even have their parents for most of their life or whatnot, or kids who end up being adopted. They don't have that say in what they want to do or whatnot, and it's. I think in today's world we really need to be better on with taking care of our kids, because it seems like a lot of the kids nowadays are either not being parented right, or they might seem lost, and we got to do something about it. But in 1999, my mom decided to just make a landslide in the family happen, and I was talking about this to my dad not too long ago recently, just saying how recently it hasn't really been bothering me. I don't know if it's because of the virus that's going on right now, or anything about the election and all that. That's just driving me nuts. Honestly, driving my mental state just lower and lower. It seems like. I don't know if it's that, but whatever it is, it's working. I mean, yeah, of course, there's times where I think about my mother, and it's hard. It really is hard, but I'm not going to focus too much on that. Long story short, by 2000, it became clear that she wasn't getting out of this phase, and, she became a drug addict, and it's, for a lot of people, it's hard to talk about family issues, but for me at least, I know my way around it, and I have my dad still, and, of course, no parent's perfect. There's going to be mistakes here and there, but, if your parents are just not giving a complete crap about you and doing all this other junk, then that's another story. But my mom decided to just do away with her own self, caused a huge rift in the family. It seemed like my sister, who was 13 in 2000, she became a teenager at that point. She did a lot of the mother stuff for me, the motherly stuff, taking care of me and all of that. So my sister was my mom when I was a little kid, and I thank her to this day for taking care of me like that. But my dad had it rough, real rough. I'm sure there were a lot of restless nights in there. My dad, he basically, I'm sure he was like, what do I do? What am I supposed to do? Well, what he did was he was a dad, and he, helped take care. Whether or not, he had his days where he just felt like he wanted to give up, maybe. And I'm sure there just been times where he wanted to give up there, but with trying to fight this whole thing with my mother and all that. But you know what? It's the people who get through situations like that. That's what makes people really tough. Some of the toughest people we get in our planet Earth is people who get through situations like that. But growing up, for me at least, I don't remember that stuff. Thankfully, I was 2 years old in 2000. By the middle of the 2000s, I was around 8 years old. For me, growing up, it was, focusing on getting through my early years in elementary school, and I went to, of course, started kindergarten in 2003. at the age of 5. I did not go to preschool. I think it was because I wasn't quite potty trained yet. I have no idea. But see, basically, I had some great elementary school teachers, and elementary school was fun, except for 5th grade. I hated 5th grade a lot, but I can recall some of my favorite teachers. My kindergarten teacher, Mrs. Caldwell. I hope she's doing well. I'm not sure if she's around still. She was not too old back then in 2004, but Mrs. Tanksley in 1st grade, Mrs. Stoffel in 2nd grade. I didn't start with her, but Mrs. King in 3rd grade. I think she passed away. I'm not sure. My old 3rd grade teacher. I think she passed away recently. Not too sure, but Mr. Allen, who just retired recently. I'm in Central Indiana, and this is where I still live to this day. Just for reference. But 5th grade, I had Mr. Asherbrenner. Actually, I surprisingly remember this. And then we were replaced with a teacher named Mrs. Newell. 6th grade was awesome. I had Mr. Timmons, and a lot of things were changing in my family. It seemed like my dad met somebody in '06, of course, and then by that point, I was starting to have a second mother in my life, basically, by 2006. So, went through that whole spiel. I really appreciated how she took good care of me through that time. Things didn't work out eventually. They split up. She has several kids. I ended up having... They got married at one point, but that didn't last very long. But had a lot of sisters there. It was fun while it lasted, though. I will say that. I mean, I did love life. I will say that. I broke my pinky finger. I had my first... No, my first injury was in 2003, I think, when I gave myself a mild concussion. I ran my head into the glass mirror. Don't know why. Don't ask how I did it. I don't know. That's really, really stupid how that came about. But I injured my left pinky finger. I think it was October 4th, 2008. Now, one fun fact about me is I remember specific dates very, very well. Don't know how I do, but it's incredible how I even remember specific dates like that. I can remember specific people's birthdays. It's incredible, especially with weather events, which I'll dive into a little bit of later. Not just talking about my personal life, but I'm also going to talk about my life in association with my career and what's going on. So, I got to middle school. Middle school things changed quite a bit in the middle of 7th grade. Met a person named Nick. He became my best friend very shortly. We loved wrestling. I've been watching wrestling, WWE. I know it's fake. Of course, we know it's fake, but I started watching wrestling in January of 2010, and I loved it. It was really awesome. It was something that was just moving. It was intense, but I loved the action that was behind it. There were so many awesome superstars that were there back then. Like I remember just seeing so many different superstars. Like, of course, John Cena was a regular wrestler. He regularly performed, and of course, Batista quit that year. For those who don't know Batista, or his history, he quit in 2010 and came back in 2014. Those who do watch WWE, but point is, me and Nick, and then our friend Robert, we would always do wrestling matches in the gym in middle school, and even in freshman year in high school. It was just me and Nick in gym class, but oh my goodness, the amount of wrestling we all did was ridiculous. It was fun, I will say. It was really fun. What was not so fun is the fact that we were kind of an outcast of the three of us, including my friend Brian. The four of us were basically the outcasts in middle school. Quite a few people try to make fun of us. In today's time, I have zero tolerance for bullying. Absolutely, Of course, I was picked on quite a bit in school. And you know what? To those who did that, I mean, look at me now. So, who cares? People do change, though. I do respect that. There are people who do change over time. So, there are those people who make a decision like, hey, what I did was wrong, whatever, X amount of years ago. The point is, though, me, Nick, and Robert, and Brian, we would always talk about wrestling, talk about other dumb stuff. New Year's Day 2011 was interesting because of the fact that Nick asked me to go to his house and have my dad come over to meet his dad, but when we did that, they suddenly realized, oh wow, they had known each other for 30 freaking years at that point. Like, they're like, oh, we used to hang out like this amount of time ago. I thought, what? So Yeah, Nick's dad and uncle knew my dad from back in the early 80s, and so they hadn't seen each other in like 30 years and whatnot. It was ridiculous. Rest in peace to Nick's dad, by the way. He passed away 7 years ago. But Mike was, I always loved Mike, Nick's dad. Pretty big guy, 6'5". I remember asking him the distinct question. Oh no, this is probably gonna get some interesting talk, but in the comments. But I asked Nick's dad, I think, a few months before he passed away. I think it was the last time I did see him or whatnot. I'm not sure, but I asked him, "Hey, who would win in a match between you and WWE superstar The Undertaker?" He said me because I would shoot him. I'm like, oh gosh, okay. Yeah. So I'll tell you what though. Seeing Mike was awesome. Mike came over to our place, and we all also hanged out at a race several years ago. It was a local race. Nick's told me that they were going to go to it and stuff, and we were like, "Well, we'll tag along with you and stuff." And me, Nick, his sister Kayla, and Nick's dad and my dad, we all hanged out and we had a great time that night. It's one of the last times we all hung out together like that. But things were changing drastically in my family's life. 2012, my dad met somebody I will not mention the name of, by the way. And you know, this is where things kind of went wrong. I think, for a while there. And long story short, for the next 4 years, we had these people in our life that should have never been a part of our family. For my dad to have what my dad went through and stuff in all of his life, and what he's done to turn things around as well, I'm very proud of him, for being the tough SOB he is. He really is seriously one of the toughest people ever. He doesn't let anything faze him. He's seen it all before. He's been through it all before. My grandmother her health was failing slowly. I realized this by like 2013. She broke her hip, I believe. She had surgery. She was in hospice for a few weeks. She went home though eventually. She was good. But I remember also the time when she had a stroke. I thought she wasn't going to make it. I do remember that specifically. It's probably one of the scariest days of my life. I'm not even going to lie right now. I think it was March 5th, 2011. She had a stroke. Suddenly, I'm in my room playing with something, and my dad suddenly runs in. She had a stroke. I thought, what? Like, what'd you just say? I will never forget looking at her in the hospital. She was pale white, and she was shaking. I thought, oh my gosh, what am I even supposed to say? I don't even know what to say right now. She pulled through, though. She went to a nursing home shortly afterwards. She was released by early April. Thank God that she made it through that. But March 2016, she got placed back into hospice because of, I think, natural reasons, and she ended up passing away on April 24th, 2016. That was hard to watch. I do remember the last time I saw my grandmother was on April 16th that year. That was the last time I saw her. That was when she came up to my brother's house, and she got to meet her grandkids, her great-grandkids. I do apologize about that, for the first and only time. But I will say though, that was definitely something that I'm happy about that happened. She got to actually ride out with my aunt to Greenfield, where my brother used to live, and meet her great grandkids, my brother's kids. That was something special. I don't even think about that too much. I don't know why. I think that should be memorized as more of a special moment, really, for in all of reality's sake. But no, my grandmother was basically like an epicenter of her family. When she passed away, it seemed like everything was crumbling very quickly. 2016 proved to be a really difficult year for, I think, all of us. It also ended up becoming the catalyst of change, I believe, because by Thanksgiving, I think it became clear that I was like, to my dad, look, man, we need to move forward from these people that we were living with. We need to move forward, like, now. This is the time. Every time I went home from, because I went to Ball State. I started Ball State in August 2015. I graduated. I'm skipping some details. So I graduated high school on June 13th, 2015. I started college August. Pardon me. Wow, disgusting. Whew. Yeah, excuse me. That was nasty. But I started college August 24th, 2015. I moved in 5 days before that. But when I came home, like for my sophomore year, the fall of 2016, every time I came home, they'd always be in an argument. And I was like, look, man, you know what? I'm done with this crap. Let's just move on. Let's get through this. Let's move on. And we did. We successfully isolated ourselves from them. My dad got near deathly sick, actually, December that year. That just made it even, that made it the challenge even more of a burden, it seemed like, at that point. But, something clicked. It was almost like a miracle happened, In the middle of winter break, they were gone, finally. December 23rd was the last day they were here, December 23rd, 2016. I went to my brother's to have my first Christmas with my brother. That's a long story. I'm not going to go into that. There's no reason to. It's nobody's business, honestly, on here. No disrespect to anyone, but it's just nobody's business. I prefer not to explain it. But, I was celebrating my first Christmas with my brother. My brother's 33 years old right now, and I'm 22. But my dad, of course, dropped them back off to northern Illinois, and he came back home, and we celebrated Christmas. It was a little bit different. We didn't have a Christmas tree, but that's not what the whole point was, And, I could come out and straight up say this because I'm not afraid to. I'm Christian. It was about, celebrating God's birthday and stuff, and just being very thankful that we actually had a roof still, he had a roof over our heads and stuff, and you're just thankful that we got rid of the evil that was absolutely needed to get rid of. And so it was so important to do that, because that made us that made 2017 so much. 2017 was a fantastic year. Ran my first half marathon. And this is where I'm going to kind of start getting a little bit about running of myself. I'm a runner. I've been a runner since August 2013. Started running in August 2013. So, in my 10th grade year of high school, my sophomore year of high school, I graduated a year early because I had enough credits, but I had to work extra hard my senior year because of extra loaded classes. But that's okay, no pain, no gain, right? That was a lot of hard work, but college would change that in an instant. But yeah, it was. I started running, and eventually I would run my first half marathon at the age of 19, which is quite phenomenal, I think, in my opinion. I didn't even expect myself to run a half marathon, or I just never really expected myself to run super long distances. But running's fun; it's great. I'm so glad I'm in this sport. Got my dad, my neighbor. My also neighbor Brandon, we did the One America 500 Festival mini marathon, which is in downtown Indianapolis. We did that on May 6, 2017. I got the bib up on my wall here in my room. Looking at that, it's amazing. The medal was so cool. I ran 2:19:46. I was going for 2:16, under 2:16, but my right leg decided, well, screw you. So it's whatever. But ran my fastest 5K later that summer, 24:33. That's still my fastest 5K. My ultimate goal for the 5K is to break 20 minutes. That does take some dedication, of course, but, if you set your mind to it, you can do it. You gotta have a positive attitude about it. Trading isn't always easy. Trading's really hard, actually, It's just how it is, and the reward is successfully completing your goals. That's where the real reward comes into play from all your hard work. That's where the rejuvenation of running comes into play, and makes your love for the sport grow even more. But yeah, 2017 was awesome. Met right now who I have on the phone with, but the volume's down, Chris. He's my best friend. He's my brother. Me and this dude, we do it seems like we're on the last several months, ever since Ball State shut down because of the virus. We were on the phone for 7 hours a day at least. You cannot separate us, hell no. But it's incredible, the people I met in college during my time at Ball State. There's a lot of great friends, and they're gonna appear on here as guests in the future. They're just some of the best people I've met, my entire life in the meteorology department, because I graduated with a degree in meteorology and climatology, and at Ball State, we have a room called the Met Lab and the GIS lab, and GIS lab is where we really congregated at quite a bit, especially towards my last couple years up there at school, and did all of our work at. We made so many great friends, memories in there. There's countless. It's just a countless amount, but yeah, 2017 was fun. I got injured at the end of September that year, pardon me, but I actually fractured a rib playing flag football. That was the last time I ever played flag football. It was fun while it lasted. I'm retired from it. Every once in a while, I'll hop into a basketball game. I just guess I'm just easily injured. I don't know. I get injured easily, I guess. I don't know. I'm guessing I'm fragile. That's quite just nice, isn't it? But no, my junior year in college was so tough. And a bit of advice for you folks that are in college right now. I'm telling you this right now, is not a walk in the park. It won't be. It'll depend on what you have going on in a specific school year. You never really know when you're going to have the toughest of times in college. For me, it was the spring of 2018 and the fall of 2018. I had such really hard classes. I didn't think I was going to make it through all of that. Not sure how I even made it through all of that. That is incredible, to say the least, that I even got through some of that. Don't know how. I had to really dig deep, and I mean to levels I had never dug deep to before, to just get through it all. And I'm not the only one, though, so, I'm not the only one that had to go through all of that. A lot of us did, especially in that Met department. And some of the courses they require us to take, I think, is just silly. Like differential equations. We're not going to use that to track a tornado. Come on. Come on, man. That, I have to say it is probably the worst class I ever took. It really is. I mean, that class just, I hated it. I really, really hated it. It gave me a migraine. Literally, it felt like every time I went into the classroom. But, I got through it. 2019 was phenomenal. I mean, yeah, I lost my uncle earlier that year, but my uncle, my dad's oldest brother, or my second oldest brother, no, my dad's oldest brother passed away at the end of February last year, and we went to Iowa because he lived in Iowa. He'd been living in Iowa basically for the last 20-something years of his life. So we went to Des Moines. We know friends in Des Moines. We went to the funeral. It was super cold. It was like 8 degrees. It was -10 for the feels-like temperature. And this lady's like, oh, when we go in this room-like thing, it ain't that bad. It was freezing cold still. It don't matter. But, oh, man. They had just had a blizzard the week before. It was like a foot of snow on the side of the roads. It was ridiculous. But that was the start to my spring break last year. Went on the storm chase, basically the trip of a lifetime. Me, my best friend Chris, and 7 others, including 2 professors. We went on the storm chase trip, Ball State storm chase trip, for 2 weeks. We went from May 10th to the 24th. We saw 2 tornadoes on May 17th in Nebraska on an enhanced risk day. There was the chance for strong tornadoes. We saw an EF2, which is considered strong, the minimal rating for a strong tornado. And we saw an EF0. We almost saw an EF3. The EF3 is the middle of the enhanced Virginia scale. I'm going to break down weather in a little bit here in just a minute. But we chased a high-risk day on May 20th. Thank God that busted, because they were calling for several long-track violent tornadoes. It was scary. It was possibly going to be a scary day, but thankfully it didn't quite match up to that. But then, of course, Jefferson City took a hit. Jefferson City, Missouri on May 22nd. By a late-night EF3 tornado. Unfortunately, it was deadly. Just a lot of crazy stuff. It ended up becoming, we were in the middle of, at the time we didn't know, of course, but we didn't know that, alright, sorry about that, folks. I had a quick interruption, but basically, the storm chase trip was really intense. We were in the middle of the longest duration tornado outbreak in U.S. history. No tornado outbreak has ever stretched for as more days as this one did, from May 17th to May 30th, 2019. I think the old record was April 30th through May 10th, 2003. And I'm talking about days with continuous reports of tornadoes. I think the certain amount, is at least 8. to count. And May 27th, Memorial Day, there was an EF4 nighttime tornado in Dayton, Ohio. Thankfully, nobody was killed in that. I was really concerned about that. But we had quite a few tornadoes, strong ones in Indiana ourselves. We had 2 EF3s and an EF4 tornado in Lawrence, Kansas, the following day on May 28th. So, yeah, that was quite something else. I still have trouble wrapping my mind around that outbreak. But then we had 10 tornadoes ourselves on June 15th for around southern Indiana, but there was 2 of them actually 2 miles south of my house. And yes, my house has actually almost been hit quite a few times. In an area where I live in, you would think, well, I mean, doesn't seem likely you would have a tornado close, but no, it's almost happened a couple times actually. But I'll break that down here in a minute. But then the rest of 2019 was gearing towards my last semester, having a great time, just trying to enjoy my time in Ball State, doing NewsLink Indiana, WCRD. Started both of them being on the weather team in August 2017, August 2017, and also doing Fantasy Express with my great friends Blake and Nathan, starting in, I believe it was I made my first guest appearance, I think, in February of last year, and it was really awesome, and I'm officially a member of the team now, even though I'm graduated, but still, that's awesome. Such a great show, talking about sports and all of that. But yeah, I graduated December 14th, 2019 with college, and then was trying to find a job for a little bit there. Wasn't working, and then the place I interned at, for Wish TVA here in Indianapolis, back in the summer of 2018, there was an interview. I did an interview for the position of part-time meteorologist, or basically weather digital producer, handling the digital side of everything with weather related, I should say. And basically March 3rd, I got the job, and I started March 9th. Was only working there for 15 days until COVID happened, of course, and then I had to work from home. Went back to, finally started to be able to work back at work on June 1st, and ever since then I've been working back at work, so it's been really awesome. Yeah, that's kind of a long rant with like the life, just general life talk. That was, yeah, but I mean, you know, I think the thing to take away from this is that life's a roller coaster. It's not perfect. If things were perfect, then we wouldn't be able to learn from failure at times. And, you know, of course, everyone does have their fair share of failures. And if we don't learn from that, we can't progress in life. It's weird to think that at times, but it's so true. Because when you learn new things, you're able to take, and if it's a good thing, if it's the right thing to learn, the right things you're learning, you can take that knowledge and carry it with you farther than you ever thought you could. So, let's talk about weather for a little bit. So, you know, I was born in a very active year. 1998, tornado-wise, was kind of active. There was just the deadliest tornado outbreak in Florida state history. On February 22nd, 23rd, the Kissimmee tornado happened. It was an F3. It was originally rated F4. I wanted to mention too, right before start talking about ratings and all of that. We used to rate tornadoes based on the Fujita scale. Ted Fujita came up with it in the 70s after doing his historic research and stuff, and analyzing things, analyzing damages and all the damage from the super outbreak of 1974, which is what a lot of our parents ended up going through and remembering, even our grandparents as well. But he was the pioneer towards getting tornadoes rated and having those descriptions and stuff. He was the main guy, and of course he had some help with him as well. One of his students, Greg Forbes, who did work at the Weather Channel, he retired recently, I believe. Ted Fujita is a historical figure in the weather world, no doubt about it. Ted Fujita passed away in November '98, shortly after I was born. Several months after I was born. But 1998, we had also 4 days after I was born, Birmingham, Alabama was hit by a violent F5 tornado. Specifically, Oak Grove was hit particularly hard. It was the second F5 to hit Birmingham in 21 years. Ironically, April 4th, 1977, they had one, which would be my birthday, April 4th. So the anniversary of that tornado falls on my birthday. Weird thing for that. It's kind of weird, honestly, in my opinion. But fun fact, there has never been a high-risk day on my birthday. There's been one on April 3rd and April 5th in general, but the highest risk I can see from historical archives was moderate in 2003. So that's the highest risk I've been under on my birthday alone. But, and then 8 days later, the Tennessee tornadoes happened. Nashville, Tennessee was hit by the F3. For those who don't know what happened with that, there was this basically, it just looked like a gray blanket being draped across the city. It was massive. It was a mile wide. Then Wayne County, Tennessee had the F5. It's one of the more less-known F5s because it didn't hit. It wasn't quite in a populous area, thankfully, but still it did a lot of really destructive damage. And then the end of May of 98, we had the Spencer, South Dakota tornado, and then the following day, the derecho through the Northeast. May 31st, 1998 also featured the first and only high risk in the northeastern United States. Up in New York, there are several intense tornadoes in New York. Binghamton, Mechanicville. One of the Ball State professors is actually from Binghamton, New York. Not sure if he was in Binghamton at the time, but it certainly was something. Of course, then Hurricane Mitch happened. That was I don't even know what to even say about that hurricane. The first time I knew about Hurricane Mitch, I think I was 11, and watching the episode of Storm Stories was sad, very sad. That was the second deadliest Atlantic hurricane on record. Honduras was just ravaged. A friend of mine actually went through it, but she wasn't in the worst of it, thankfully, because the worst of it was just flat out awful. I don't know what other adjective to use with that one, honestly. But the first, and there are several events I do want to touch on. I'll touch on do little stats for you folks with this little segment of the podcast. But so the Storm Prediction Center nowadays, over the last I think it was 5 years ago, they implemented a 5 categorical risk scale instead of the usual 4, I believe that's what it was, or 3. It used to be general thunderstorms, slight risk, moderate risk, high risk. That's what it used to be for about 15, 20 years. And so in 2014, 2015, I think it was 2015 is when they started doing this. It goes from general thunderstorms to marginal risk to slight risk to enhanced risk to moderate to high. There should be some shifting in those risks. It is definitely misleading. You would think enhanced is worse than moderate. No, moderate is actually above enhanced. Somebody actually made a great point about this on Twitter of how much higher the I'm not so sure. I think it's like let me think about this for a second. I want to say it was like the order of magnitude higher it was from the next one, and like moderate was only a small amount compared to the high risk in general. Of course, the high risk is the highest you can get. The first time I was under a high risk in my life was you have to go all the way back to October 24th, 2001. My best friend Chris was actually in that risk that day, and they had gotten spared, thankfully. There was a deadly F3 in St. Joseph County, Indiana, up in northern Indiana. The high risk went from central Indiana through southern Michigan that day. We were actually under tornado warnings ourselves that day from a squall line, but we were under a tornado watch and everything that day. There was a tornado outbreak, so that's basically how it went down that day. I think one of the most notable high-risk days, though, in my life would be for May 30th, 2004. This featured the highest tornado probabilities that I had been under my entire life. Um, of course, when we chased the high risk on May 20th, 2019, there was a 45% SIG hatch. These probabilities, you can go to the Storm Prediction Center and see what I'm talking about with what risk levels how they do their threat levels and stuff, and what correlates that to what risk. You can't get a high risk off of hail, I can tell you that, but you can get a high risk off of tornadoes, especially tornadoes, and damaging or damaging winds. It depends. It's usually one or the other. But May 30th, 2004 was Indy 500 day here at Indianapolis. We had Buddy Rice. Let me just break it down like this. So May 30th, 2004, it was raining early in the morning, 6:20 in the morning. Rain was falling early. Continued on and off through 9:30. It dried out a little bit. Mary George Holman, she gave the command to start your engines at 1:07 p.m., so they're a little bit behind schedule by almost an hour, I think. From what I remember reading the details about the race, of course, A.J. Foyt IV, he wrecked pretty early and was out of the race. Robbie Gordon wanted to race some of that, and the Coca-Cola 600 was going on in Charlotte, North Carolina, later that night. He wanted to get out of there and do that race too, so he was kind of like splitting the difference, doing one of those. But lap 28 came, and it was pouring again. It threatened to postpone the race till Monday, but they eventually got back on green. They got through the halfway mark, so they didn't have to postpone until Monday. Basically, whatever was stopping them next was stopping the entire race in general. That would be it. The official results would be that. Mile 160. Wow, dyslexia alert. Lap 160 came. We had a lone supercell coming our way. This would end up becoming a problem, becoming a serious issue. Well, I'll talk about why here in a minute, but so Buddy Rice was leading basically most of the race. He led 91 laps overall in that race. A lot of people were banking on fuel and stuff. Buddy Rice ended up being in the lead with 20 laps to go. Soon as basically right about that point, also, too, the Eastern Conference Finals between the Indiana Pacers and the Detroit Pistons were happening 2 miles south of Indy. 6 miles south of the Speedway, a tornado had touched down by the 465-69, I-69 juncture, basically. And this thing was moving slow. I think moving northeast at 20 miles per hour, I think was the fastest speed it was moving at. But there was a tornado on the ground moving into Marion County. And we had 250,000 spectators at the race. So everyone's scrambling for cover. We got a strong tornado coming up through southern Marion County. Hops over 465. It's starting to come up into the Irvington area. It gets within a quarter mile of my house. My dad saw it. He had friends over that day. He didn't think a tornado was going to happen, but I mean, we were at the tail end. We were in the middle of the largest Memorial Day tornado outbreak in history. Memorial Day weekend tornado outbreak in history. We were also at the tail end of a week-long outbreak of tornadoes, which also included the former widest tornado on record, the Howell, Nebraska tornado. That was a monster. But this tornado, though, in Indy, it was skirting up. At one point, the warning said large and dangerous tornado was ongoing. It was scary. Thankfully, nobody was killed. Amazingly enough, nobody died. That's great because the warning lead time was critical, especially for our second longest strike tornado in state history, which happened a year and a half before this one, September 20th, 2002. I think the third or fourth ever tornado emergency being issued. The first one was a 1999 Moore, Oklahoma tornado, but a tornado emergency is the highest level of tornado warning you get. That is when you have a violent tornado, a large, dangerous tornado, getting ready to impact a high-populated area. So, we had a long-tracked F3 tornado, rain-wrapped, and after reading also a study from via Colorado State, half the people ignored the warning. That's scary because you have a lot of people in danger from an intense tornado. And also, too, it was rain-wrapped. You couldn't really see it. that's a recipe for fatalities. And amazingly enough, nobody was killed in that tornado either. It was on the ground for 112 miles. It started down near, I think, Bloomington and went all the way up to Hartford City. It was on the ground for over 2 hours. But the tornado from 2004 was an F2. Was on the ground for, I think, for 20 minutes. It damaged like 700 homes or something like that. Yeah, 29 injuries, I think. But, you know, Indianapolis is not vulnerable or is not immune to tornadoes. We've even had violent tornadoes in our county. We've had 2 of them on record. Our strongest tornado, I think, in our county's history, and this has been deemed the strongest tornado to hit our county, was May 14th, 1972. This tornado started at the 9700 block of Washington Street, went on through German Church and 16th. That was where the F4 rating was applied. And the Heather Hills section was the worst damage as well. So, yeah, it was destructive. And then June 11th, 98 was the most recent violent tornado to happen in. There's also too weather forecast offices. Yeah, I'm in the National Weather Service, Indianapolis' jurisdiction. I'm in the center of it. And this was the last time we've had a violent tornado in our county Warren area. Was on June 11th, 1998. The tornado started 3 miles east of my house, went over I-70, went towards north of Greenfield. It was an F4. Now we rate tornadoes, and I forgot to mention this earlier. We rate tornadoes now. We do it now via enhanced Fujiya scale, so it's more fine-tuned. I still think it could be a little bit better with some damage to various rating things because sometimes I feel like they just don't rate things right. Like, for example, the Vilonia, Arkansas tornado from April 27th, 2014. That was a high-end EF4. A lot of people thought it was EF5. Incredibly destructive tornado. I think the deadliest Arkansas tornado since the 60s. That was unbelievable. But, like reading about tornado events and getting into weather, that really helped shape my passion and motivation and determination to try and become an honorary meteorologist, and with us we've seen what these things can do, what weather can do. With Central Indiana, our weather just changes quite a bit. I'll tell you what. It goes from like snowing to thunderstorming in like a day, it seems like. I don't even know what to tell you. It's like, it goes from like, I'll give you a good example. We had recently had a serious Arctic blast last year on January 30th in 2019. We had wind chills of -40. 5 days later, we were in the 50s. Can you explain that? What in the world's going on? But another thing too, like temperatures in general, yeah, we've had, I say the 2 worst times I've had with temperatures were January 2014 and January 30th, 2019. But we rarely hit the hundreds. We rarely hit triple digits in Indianapolis. 2012 was atrocious. It was super hot all summer. That was the hottest summer I've ever been through. It was like the highest temperature in a long time happened that year. 105 on back-to-back days in July of 2012. It was scorching. It was terrible. Our climate is a humid climate. We have a hot and humid summer. That's what we do. That's what we have. We have hot and humid summers. It's traditional. It sucks, but it is what it is. We're in that zone where we have those kind of summers. And then, of course, our winters are rather cold and kind of wet. It depends. But for me, though, being a meteorologist, it's amazing. Love studying the weather. But, I gotta say, too, you can't let your excitement for weather get in the way of the emotional aspect as well, because, there are people that do, of course, unfortunately lose their lives in severe weather and, just not just thunderstorms, but also, of course, ice storms, blizzards, high wind events. Like just past Monday, we had a derecho. A derecho is a long-lived line of thunderstorms that has damaging wind reports that stretch at least 250 miles. It has to be significant in aspects as well. I think the death toll from that's now 3, I believe. It's Iowa had, and two, the economical losses can be just staggering. I think $3 billion are lost. Iowa's cornfields are basically in ruins, and Iowa is a more rather wide open state. It's really tough to see that. Like, also too, from the super outbreak in 2011, there was so much economical loss. There were 300 plus fatalities from that outbreak. From April 27th alone. You know, the death and destruction and the cost as well. It can be overwhelming, but our warning system has gotten so much better over the years, and I think it's incredible how we've been able to get better warning lead times. I'll give an example. So back in like '99, our warning lead time was like roughly 3 minutes on average. Now it's like 15 minutes, and there are times where you can get warning lead times up to a good maybe 45 minutes to an hour, and we're trying to strive to make the warning lead times much, 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 much longer. My question is why do people ignore warnings? You know, here's the thing too. There are a lot of false alarms. It's true. Uh, Not just mine, but all my meteorology friends. One of our biggest idols, of course, or some of us could, for some of us, could be our biggest idol. ABC 3340 chief meteorologist James Spann said it in a video of basically the 1 year, basically coming up on the 1 year anniversary of the April 2011 super outbreak. Tornado warnings, there's too many false alarms. The false alarm ratio is off the hook. Um, you know, it gets me wondering too, like why so many people died in the Lee County, Alabama tornado from March 3rd last year. 23 people were killed. I just couldn't believe it. You wonder, you ask yourself these things: why do so many people sometimes in these events die? Did they hear the warning? I mean, sometimes two people do the right thing and they still lose their lives. It's it's very, very weird and finicky how nature works, the natural course of life works. But I will say there are some people who just ignore the warning and are like it's nothing, but in reality it could be the worst thing ever. You just don't know. That's why we gotta take every warning seriously. You know, even severe thunderstorms in general can be serious in their own rights. We've got to take these things more seriously. We definitely got to do better in having the public understand that we have a serious situation ongoing and reassuring them that that we need to take this seriously and not have them take the notion of like, oh, it's just another storm. That storm could be something else we've never dealt with before. It's incredible. Like, you know what? A good example of this, and this has been going on for a while now. I feel like I'm just kind of going on a tangent, but it's kind of like one thing leads to another. It's kind of weird how that works, but not really though with weather. I think it's common. One thing does lead to another because it's all intertwined. When Hurricane Michael happened in October 2018, for those of you folks listening, you went through that. I could imagine, and I cannot say how I feel, like really, like be like I cannot say I know how you feel, because Hurricane Michael was a Category 5 hurricane that hit the Panhandle of Florida October 2018. It was the strongest hurricane to ever make landfall in that specific area. There had never been a hurricane of such intense force hit that region, and there were people that were not taking it seriously. Actually, Panama City Beach was in ruins. Mexico City Beach was destroyed. People weren't even taking it seriously, and I'm thinking to myself, well, you know what? We did what we could in warning these people about it. Like, people did what they had to do, and I mean, it was a very destructive hurricane. If there's something that's never happened before in that region, it's about to happen, you might want to get out of there. Evacuate. I understand there's some people that can't evacuate a hurricane because, they don't have the transportation, or just some people, like the elderly, are just like, no, I want to stay here. I've rode so many storms here or whatnot. And it's hard to hear that because you want your family to be okay. You want your friends to be okay. It's hard. It can be hard trying to convince them to leave at times too, and it's frustrating. But at the end of the day, I mean, I don't know. We can only do so much, but we can always strive to be better in the weather department. We can always make improvements. You know, there's always so much more we can do, and there is. I can't wait to see the evolution of where we go with weather and better predicting it on all aspects, not just tornadoes, not just hurricanes. I mean, like just and also having better preparedness and protection and better safety nets. I really, 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 really hope to God that we can end up funding for community shelters. There needs to be more community shelters. There needs to be more community shelters. So I gotta say it one more time for the government to understand, our local and state governments. You know, I get it can cost a lot of money, but our money doesn't go to the right places anyway. It seems like a lot of the time. So, you know, we want, especially for people who live in mobile homes. Let me tell you something, folks. We're always going to say it because it's true. And you've got to remember this. The worst places to be in a tornado, warning, car, mobile home, and under the overpass. A mobile home is a death trap. A mobile home can be easily destroyed in a weak tornado. A weak tornado can toss a mobile home and possibly put in ruins almost. When you get to like EF3, strength at least, bye, mobile home's gone. It's going to be shredded to pieces. Don't even get me started with an EF5. That's another thing I didn't really mention too. To help you folks out with like ratings, you're probably wondering, you've probably been wanting me to mention like what are the ratings about. So I'm gonna quickly go over this, and then touch base one more time on community shelters, and then this podcast will end. But so we have EF0 to EF5. Weak tornadoes are EF0 and EF1s. Those are the most common tornadoes. EF2 and EF3 tornadoes are strong. They do account for almost a quarter of fatalities. Violent tornadoes are the rare ones. EF4 and EF5 tornadoes are 1% of all tornadoes, but they account for almost 3/4 of tornado fatalities. EF5 tornadoes, there have only been 59 officially rated EF5s since the year 1950. And these are ones that don't just touch down and lift up. They touch down on the ground, and they stay on the ground for dozens and dozens of miles and cause incredible damage. We're talking your entire home gets picked up and just lifted away, leaving nothing but the foundation left. We're talking trees being nearly completely debarked, the road getting ripped up, the asphalt getting ripped up from the road. Just incredible damage. Thankfully, those are extremely, extremely rare, but still, they can happen. And, for any tornadic event, we want people to be safe. People do need better safety measures. They need a safety net. They need to know if, like, for example, Easter Sunday, the virus going on, that really hampered with tornado shelters. They did open some, thankfully, but, what about those folks about the folks in like around Bassville, Mississippi and Cecil, Mississippi, where that record-breaking 2+ mile wide EF4 tornado happened? They had nowhere to run to probably, and we lost 8 people in that tornado. That was where a quarter of our fatalities came from. Those homes out there probably aren't as, of course, they were basically swept off the foundation, and it depends too with an EF5. It needs to be anchored down probably with bolts and stuff. It depends. That's where the rating gets distinguished, basically, too. That's one of the ways that better distinguish what rating it actually deserves. But, like I said, I think there needs to be shelters built along, like, a highway or whatnot, or along roads. People, more than ever, I want to, advocate for safety. Absolutely. Ever since the Nashville, Tennessee tornadoes from the overnight hours into March 3rd, 2020 in Cookeville, Tennessee. We've got to put safety first for these people and make sure they are receiving the warnings and not ignoring them, and or because some people, when those tornadoes happened, a lot of people were asleep. It was 2 in the morning. Horrible time for tornadoes to be happening. Nocturnal tornadoes are more deadly in general because most people are asleep. We've had a running theme of nighttime strong tornadoes this year. It's kind of scary, I'm not going to lie. But there needs to be that safety net. There needs to be a much better safety net for folks who don't have that reliable shelter. And that needs to be started now. It should be going on. It should have been going on a long time ago. But no, we want to do other things. And, I don't know. Some things can't be explained. But that was a long episode. Next time, I'm going to talk about sports in general and my history of sports and stuff and what I like about sports and what I don't like about sports and touch base mainly on football, basketball, college football, and college basketball, and talk about what my history is with them and watching sports in general. That will be a fun talk, but I want to thank you guys for listening to this really long rant. I know it sounded like a long rant, but like I said, one thing leads to another, and I just like to talk. That's just me, I guess, but that's okay. Some of us do like to talk, and it just depends on the person, but that's okay. Thank you guys for tuning in for this first episode of the Lifecast podcast. Stay cool, everybody. I'll talk to you guys again soon.